Hello, namaskaram, namaskar. My name is Pooja Dwivedi. Welcome to my class. In today's class, we shall focus upon those many important topics that you may come across during your GS Mains Paper Second. I'm talking about the upcoming mains examination. All the very best for that. But even if you're not preparing for the current mains examination, I highly recommend and suggest you to watch this class. You're going to learn a lot, especially even for the UPSC mains 2024. Try to build your base accordingly. International relations, it is one of the section of our examination that is highly dynamic. We must continuously keep ourselves abreast about the happenings, not only in the neighborhood, but across the world. Specifically, those important topics which are important from the Indian prism or perspective. So here I am to help you. At the end of this particular class, do tell me in the comment segment what more topics should I add. Today I am going to talk about 4 important topics. In the next few classes, I am going to add many other topics such as India in UNESCO, India in the UN peacekeeping mission, India and neighborhood, specifically Pakistan, China, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India and the USA, India and Russia, India, Australia, India, Egypt, many things we are going to complete within the span of upcoming few days. I'm targeting at least 8 to 10 classes for mains 2023. So do comment if you find anything that is more useful. I will definitely add it. So today in this class, we will talk about India and the Global South, how India is emerging as the voice of Global South, how many countries are ready to rally behind India as leader. The world needs a benevolent leader, and India fits the part. India and Eurasia. We all were thinking that this is the era of Indo Pacific. But when Russia invaded Ukraine, the focus again went back to Asia and Eurasia. So we are going to discuss it from that perspective as well. What is the economic significance, security challenges, and the importance of developing relations between Russia, China, and Iran? Then, India and the G7. India has been invited at the G7 summit more than one occasion, two, three, many occasions. India has been invited to be a part of the G7. The bigger question is, why does an elite group such as the G7 wants India to be a part of it? Is it thinking about making India a part of the G7 soon? Will India join it or not? And India and the Pacific Island. For the first time ever, any Indian Prime Minister visited Papua New Guinea. We all saw the visuals of how the leader of Papua New Guinea was touching the feet of the Indian Prime Minister, showing respect to the Indian diaspora, hence, and the entire Indian population. This is the role that India is playing. India is emerging as a global power. It is the era of India, and in the upcoming few years, we are going to be the leaders. We are going to talk about from that perspective. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about a very important information related to it. Do not need to worry about note making. Please don't do it. I provide all my notes, specifically this PDF will also be provided through my Telegram channel that is by the name of Pooja Dwivedi UPSC. If you have any queries regarding this examination, you can talk to me on my Instagram as well. And need be, if you're a student of mains 2023, if you need more guidance, I will also help you through it. All right. Then, first of all, let's talk about India and the Global South. Whenever we are going to write any answer, make sure you are conceptually clear and precise over it. Any question could be asked with respect to it, but you must be clear about the basic concepts. So what is Global South? Is it all the South countries, all the countries that are falling in the Southern Hemisphere, that means south of the equator? No. It's a geopolitical term. It's not a geographical term, but a geopolitical term. In the year 1980s, a line was imagined that divided the rich north and the poor south. Why am I saying poor? Because back then in the 1980s, this was, of course, a truth. The northern hemisphere, most of the countries of it were becoming richer and richer. These were the North American countries and the European countries. The south or the southern, mostly the southern hemisphere countries were either underdeveloped, developing, or poor, will never be developed. This was the thinking behind it. So this line was known or is known as the branched line. It's an imaginary line that divides the elite rich north from the poor south. And India, as you can see, is lying entirely, and even China is entirely lying in the northern hemisphere. But still they were considered as a part of the global south. This concept and this terminology took more institutionalized format in 1969 when political activist Carl Oglesby, he propounded this term. He used this term specifically. The term was Global South in a magazine. And he said war in Vietnam was the culmination of a history of northern dominance over the Global South. So hence the term Global South. Remember, it's a geopolitical term that takes its roots from the brand line, and then you define the brand line. It's an imaginary line, and hence you start with the introduction if a question is asked from like this. So this is the global south. Most of the countries have remained poor. They have either remained underdeveloped or they were developing. So here we have to understand the role of India as an emerging voice of the global south. Even if we are developing right now, our heft is becoming stronger. We are not like China. We do not have such aggressive stance over claims. We just want to ensure that we grow, and along with us, other countries of the south also grow. Sabka saath, sabka vikas. This is not only true in the case of India, but also the entire region that India has interest in. Okay, moving on. So significance of the global south, we have to talk about that. Why all of a sudden global south has become so important? It was important, but its potential was underutilized. With the expansion of BRICS has recently expanded. It has added 6 countries. The effect will come from 1st January 2024. So BRICS countries include Brazil, Russia, India, and China and South Africa. But now Egypt, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Argentina, amongst others, will also be a part of BRICS. 6 countries have been added. That means BRICS as an emerging bloc is getting stronger and stronger. And it is the time when you cannot take the global south for granted. The global south have started, brushing off the Western hegemony. Specifically, since the time the USA withdrew from Afghanistan, the failure to check Russia when it comes to invading Ukraine, and also Chinese and also the tussle between China and USA. All this has made the Western hegemony, the corrosion of Western hegemony, inevitable. And that is why the shift of focus is now on the global south. So, economic significance, let's talk about it for a while. See, E7 or emerging 7 economies such as Brazil, China, India, Indonesia, Mexico, Russia, and Turkey. According to a report, these are expected to grow at an average annual rate of 3.5% for the next 34 years. When we talk about the G7, the elite group, which consists of Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK, and the USA, they are anticipated to grow at a much lower rate at around 1.6. So, the economic power shifting has begun. With the expansion of the BRICS, currently we know that the BRICS share about 26 to 27%. We can range it from 25 to 27% of the GDP of the entire world. With addition of more countries, the GDP will rise. Also, we are now becoming a kind of a bloc. in which most of the countries that are joining in are oil producing countries. Power imbalance is occurring. G7 is scared because from the very beginning, the perspective of the BRICS was to counterweight the West, to have better negotiating capabilities. That is why the global south is becoming more important. Power balances are shifting. We are no longer living in a unipolar or a bipolar world. We are now becoming multipolar. And the global south, so many countries are there. That is why the global south is becoming important. When your economic significance rises, hence your political influence will also increase. China did it. China first grew economically, then it started flexing its muscles. So as a bloc, if we talk about if the global south starts becoming economically empowered, the geopolitical heft will also increase. Then we can talk about reforming the multilateral institutions, representing ourselves in the multilateral institutions. It's all about the money. You have to keep that in mind when we talk about geopolitics. If you're able to show your weightage according to your economic growth, you will be respected in the global scenario, and this is the truth. This has always been the truth. Look at the USA. Look at China now. Of course, China's credibility as a benevolent power is not there. But still, when it has grown economically, it was able to assert itself more strongly. That is why. Although we will never become like China. Security implications, when we talk about, most of the global south economies actually lie in, of course, that region, but in the Indo Pacific region, which is a very important maritime trade route. Most of the countries are dominant over here. Also, in order to ensure that the coastal regions of other countries such as the USA remain safe, they have to ensure that the Pacific Island, which are also a part of the global south, remain strong. That is why, from the security perspective also, the global south is important. Then we have natural resources. So many countries are having natural resources, critical minerals, which are still unexploited. When we start exploiting it, we will become more economically empowered. So these are the significance. Moving ahead. Now, challenges are many. Many challenges are there when we talk about negotiating with the West. On what basis we are actually having the challenges? Let's talk about that. And this is from the perspective of negotiating with the West, presenting ourselves in front of the West. Let's talk about it. The great power rivalries impact the decision-making process at the global level. USA is against Russia. Russia is against the USA. China is against the USA, but it is a friend of Russia. China and India are at loggerheads when it comes to the dispute with respect to international boundaries. So, these are the many issues that are shadowing upon the collective good of the global south. Many economies, big economies, they are not seeing eye to eye with each other when it comes to certain foreign scenarios. So this is one of the challenges. Secondly, we need to carry out a reform in the multilateral decision-making process. UNSC has terribly failed. It's a complete failure. It couldn't check Russia because of the veto power it has. The veto that the countries of the United Nations Security Council always use in order to safeguard their own interests. So UNSC is a complete failure. We need to ensure that if we want a sort of revolution in the decision-making process, we as Global South are also included, and we need to reform the multilateral institutions. Economic heft, geopolitical heft, security heft, representation. We need to reinterpret normative idioms in global politics. Normative idioms. See, there is a thing that is called normative power. If I perpetuate something that is very good for me as an economy or my security or my politics, I normalize it. When I normalize it, it becomes a normative power. It could be anything. It could be okay that I as a country exploit oil from this region and I do not care about the inhabitants of there. It is a norm. It's a normative power. Similarly, through definitions, I can do it. What is the definition of democracy? Many countries do not actually see eye to eye on that. What is climate change? Many countries call it a hoax. When climate change is impacting mostly, when it was impacting mostly the south, it was a hoax. Now it has started to impact the north as well. Wildfires, more and more hurricanes, typhoons, cyclones. So climate change, we have to agree on a particular definition. Also, terrorism has not been defined anywhere, and not one country right now is safe from it. So we need to ensure that we talk to the north, the global north, that please make sure that you define it, we define it, and hence we work together on this. But India is emerging as the voice of the global south. India is the most suitable country in the global south to be a voice. Why? We will discuss that. But let's talk about India's engagement with the global south. India engages with the global south through consultation. We do not dictate. We do not spell out the norms. We are not authoritative. We consult. We first know the demands. What are the demands of this particular country? Hence, we supply. So it's demand driven because we are consultative in nature. We are also outcome oriented. Whenever we plan something out, we ensure that we deliver on it. If we are not delivering on anything, why should anybody depend on us? So that is why we are outcome oriented. We are people centric. We always ensure that people to people contacts, they manifest in the form of delegation level engagement, cultural programs, historical exchanges, cultural exchanges. So these are the many processes through which India engages, and we treat everyone equally. We do not give preferential treatment in the global south. If any country is good for us, good for our security, is also at par with us with respect to our security challenges, is respecting our sovereignty and integrity. That is why we, on the basis of all this, we treat everyone equally. This is what every country does. Now, Pacific Islands will rally behind India at the global fora. Papua New Guinea said it. And this is what the position that India is holding right now. Of course, we are consultative. We will never become authoritative. India is the most suited country. Why? Because UPSC can ask you, why is India the most suited country to lead the global south or become a bridge in the global south? Let's talk about it. India started the non-aligned movement with respect to when the world was becoming increasingly bipolar. India said that we are newly dependent. How can we choose one country? And we need to develop ourselves first. We cannot be entangled in your rivalries, right? So these countries, which are my fellows, my colleagues, which have become newly independent, we first need to take care of our domestic needs. So we will not align with you. This is what India said. India, along with countries from Africa, Asia, Latin America, and other regions of the world, started it. And from non-alignment, we are becoming multi-aligned. It's very hard for any country right now to stay aloof from the global situation. So India is ensuring that we align ourselves, yet we are neutral. The most important example that you can cite in the paper is the stance of India with respect to Russia-Ukraine war. How many times did the USA ask India to cease ties with Russia in one way or the other? India never did it. India still remained sure that it is keeping its trade ties intact with Russia. And do you know, during this period only, India made a state visit. India made a state visit showing that right now, India is one of the most important countries in the world to the USA. And even Joe Biden said it. When you are able to balance both these sides of the global power at with such a good tact that you are a good friend of both, you are saying it on the face of the Russian president. This is not an era of war. You are saying it to the West that why is it okay for Europe to think that Europe's problems is the world's problem? But still India is able to maintain good contacts while being very straightforward to the point. We are able to assert ourselves now because India knows that it is becoming a Vishwaguru. That is why India is the most suited country to lead the world, to lead the global south right now. Okay, then we have the group of 77. Now, on 15th June 1964, collective economic interests were manifested through group of 77. These 77 emerging, we can say, developing economies, they came together, said we will form a group by quantity and ask the West to ensure that we develop collectively. India was also a part of this. Recently, at the Voice of the Global South Summit, India made certain promises, and on the basis of this, we can say that there are initiatives that have been undertaken with respect to the global south. What is India doing? We are doing all this. Vaccine Maitri program, through this, India ensured that we provide vaccines to even those who never even thought they will be integrated in the vaccine chain because of their low economic scenario. But India ensured that no country is left behind. We took care of vaccines and we took care that they reach the point where it is needed the most. Human assistance and disaster relief. We know that the global south is infested with disasters. We institutionalize the HADR so that we can help the global south. Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program that started in 1964. It ensured that we are developing the economies not only on the basis of grants, loans, but also giving them technical support. But on the basis of certain things, we are lagging behind. Not India, but the global south as a whole. First, we have energy crises. Currently, the situation is such that we are highly dependent on one country or the other. And when there is a turmoil, the energy supply chains become very, you can say there is an issue with respect to supply chain. So energy crisis is there. When there is no energy, our economic goals can fall behind. Crisis in political scenario. Many countries of the global south, in Asia, Latin America, they are seeing that it's the situation, political situation is such that democracy is not able to thrive. When there is it is very hard for India as a democracy to talk to other countries when they are not democracies because the goals are very different. Climate crises. The global south always is most impacted by the climate changes. When there is a need of financial assistance, the West promises but never delivers on time. So we need to develop our own mechanism so that we can have, or we can also take care of the climate crisis that is going on. Border disputes, India and China, China and Russia, Pakistan and India. These countries, which should be an example of diplomacy and having a solution to border disputes through diplomacy, these countries are falling behind on that. And that always overshadows any platform. So we need to solve that as well. Arogya Maitri Wellness Friendship has been launched recently at the Voice of Global South Summit. And through it, essential medical supplies will be given from India to any countries in the global south that needs it. Global South Center of Excellence that will provide help in research on development solutions or best practices of any global south countries. We are also going to provide Global South Science and Technology Initiative, also Global South Youth Diplomats Forum, so that the youth can have exchanges amongst them, amongst the different countries of the global south, and Global South Scholarship. If any person from the global south wants to study in India, we will give them scholarship on their set criteria as well. Now, I hope you understood India and the global south. You can write a good answer. Make sure you use mind maps. Okay, try to introduce maps in your answers. Try to introduce charts in your answers. Make it crisp, make it very to the point, because the examiner is sitting with a lot of copies. They might not want to read in paragraphs, so they always want to ensure that you write bullets, and so that they can just see the highlights, they understand what you are trying to say, and then they move forward by giving you good marks. I also conduct answer writing sessions on Saturdays through my Telegram channel. So if you are having any issues, you can also join that. All right. Now, India and Eurasia, let's talk about it. Eurasia. There is no set definition in the international relations that what is Eurasia. It can be a landmass, but more so, it's a geopolitical term. So Eurasia is the largest continental area on the earth. It comprises of 93 countries of Europe, Middle East and Asia. It is home to over 5 billion people. More people, more demographic dividend. Also, geologically, it is represented by the Eurasian tectonic plate. Also, Eurasian IR, I have already told you, it doesn't have a set definition. Okay, it's a geopolitical term. 31% of the natural gas reserves are found here. 17% oil, 23% iron ore, 14% gold, and 7% copper. So you know that when any region is rich with reserves, it becomes an area of competition. And hence, any country which is able to make inroads in such a competitive area will grow the best. And China is trying to do that. So India is also trying to ensure that it is keeping up with China. India and Eurasia, let's talk about that. Significance of Eurasia can be known from the fact that the Belt and Road Initiative, Xi Jinping's pet initiative, the Belt and Road Initiative, which connects almost 3 continents, Asia, Europe, and Africa, through a red network of roads, railways, shipping routes. Through this, China wants to ensure that it exploits the reserves that are found here. First, that BRI is striving for a great power status and thus has increased engagement within Eurasia. That is why India needs to keep up. India does not want to fall behind. Although the counterweight to it, International North-South Transport Corridor, I will talk about that as well. It is a little late. Then, as you can see, this is the Belt and Road Initiative, how it is going through. Moving on. Next part is changing geostrategic alignments. When the USA is at loggerheads with both Russia and China, what will happen? These 2 countries are coming together. These 2 countries are forming their own bloc along with Iran. Iran is also at the receiving end of sanctions, right? That is why a new bloc is emerging. This is purely seen by the defense exercise Maritime Cooperation that happened between Russia and China in 2022 and the Great Eurasian Partnership in 2015, which aims at synchronizing BRI and the Eurasian Economic Union. So the thing is that China is very assertive. China has been assertive since its economic rise. That is why India is trying to keep up. It is significant from this perspective. Then regional alliances, I have already told you, Russia and Iran, they have deepened diplomatic and economic cooperation. Another thing is that China, Russia, Pakistan, Iran and Turkey, these are forming their own bloc. A new security bloc is being formed. And this, because of this, the significance of this region has also risen. Security reasons. Pakistan and China are iron brothers. And Turkey always tries to condemn India on the Kashmir issue. So security significance is also there. Countermeasure to Indo Pacific region. The Quad is more of an American program when it began. Later on, because of China's rise, it is now a program for India and Japan as well. But China's assertiveness is not only in Indo Pacific, right? The Quad which has been formed, the AUKUS which has been formed is for Indo Pacific. What about Eurasia? Eurasia is being left behind and from the Indian perspective, and that is why it is emerging as a counterweight to the Quad or the Indo Pacific. All right, I have already told you about this. Let's talk about the alternatives. What can India do? See, first of all, we talked about the International North-South Transport Corridor. This idea was touted in the 2000s when it was suggested that we must add, let's take the help of this particular diagram, the western area of Indian territory to the Baltic Sea through different lanes. It could be road, railways, shipping lanes, but we couldn't give it the form it needs. Iran said, yes, you can pass through my region. I am in for it. My buddies, Russia and India. As the time progressed, at least 13 countries also said, at least 13 countries together said that yes, we will do it. We will make a proper shipping route through which we can ensure that each and every one of us grows economically. But that never happened. the projects under it have not gotten the attention they need. Even after Ashgabat Agreement, when India joined it in 2018, this issue is still an issue because of the sanctions, of course, on Iran. It is a contributing factor. But India, from its perspective, has not done a lot. So India needs to buck up when it comes to the INSTC, along with the Ashgabat Agreement, so that we can be more connected to the Eurasian region. India is working towards joining the EEU to further its contacts with Eurasia. See, free trade agreement is very important for India, specifically with countries that have almost similar or more GDP than India, so that we can be a market. Also, we can find markets in these particular countries. When you have an economic relation with one country, it becomes really easy for you to talk about other perspective as well, strategic partnerships as well. So India is trying to do that. Single tariff, boosting exports and overall economic growth, it is important for India. India must work on the free trade agreements as well. Now, social. India has joined the Central Asian e-network. It is an attempt to leverage, it is started by India. It is an attempt to leverage its prowess in IT sector by linking India's educational and top hospitals with each other. And this is working in India's favor. Also, we need an alternative to the Suez Canal. Suez Canal, nowadays you will find news that Suez Canal is more the time blocked due to the blockage by certain ships that are passing through. So we need a particular movement route from mainland area, the land area of Eurasia, so that we can be more efficient, cost efficient, time efficient when we trade through different countries. That is why we need it. Euro-Asian inland transport links, it provides an alternative, but still we have to ensure that we work on that. Now, the students who have joined us today, or if they want to take admission in a foundation batch, I will be taking up international relations in the P2I batches. If you want to take admission, 31st of August is the last date. 23rd from onwards, 23rd August onwards, we started our batches. These are live batches from 6 p.m. You will be able to interact with the teachers. If you have any questions regarding this particular batch, you can also talk to me through my Instagram. Take admission, you will be provided with everything. That is prelims test series, mains test series, daily answer writing practice, current affairs module. A campus program is also there for those students who are going to qualify UPSC Prelims 2024. You will be called to the StudyIQ campus to prepare with us, free of any extra charges. Everything will be included here. Even your edible facilities will be included here. Do not worry about anything else. Just take admission, because we are going to provide it at just 29,999 only. Use the code PDLive. PDLive is also available for other courses. Alright. Now, problem is delayed projects. Under the INSTC, apart from certain projects, Chabahar Port, Ashgabat Agreement Transport Corridor, have not got the finance that they need. This is because of the issues of sanction that USA imposed on Iran during the Trump era. Rise of China is another issue. Now, China already was in tatters with the USA. So it tried to exploit that situation with Iran, and now it is exploiting that situation in Russia. It is trying to boost its relations. India stopped oil imports from Iran. Even we were not sanctioned under CAATSA, countering America's adversaries through Sanctions Act. We were not sanctioned under this, but still we had to curb our imports. And in 2018-19, the budgetary allocation for Chabahar was also reduced to zero. So India was also a part of the problem when it comes to the INSTC. What does India want to do now? The way it has remained assertive, it should remain assertive with India as well, Iran as well. But let's see what happens in the future. There is also regional turmoil and diplomatic challenges. Most of the countries of Eurasia, because of certain border disputes, are also a very big challenge for India. How to overcome those, and the problem can be overcome only through diplomatic channels. How do we overcome those? This is something that we need to see. Free trade agreement, I have already told you. Why is it important for India to have a free trade agreement? So that tariffs can be reduced, more market is available to India, and India can exploit those markets. We have to engage with the European Union as well as the NATO. Few years ago, NATO was termed as brain dead by the French president. But now, NATO is alive again. So we have to ensure that we constantly are in contacts with NATO as well as the European Union. We cannot pick a side. We cannot become like China. Regional platforms such as Shanghai Cooperation Organization, BRICS, G20, these all can be used to ensure that we resolve our border disputes. Specifically, I'm talking with respect to India and Pakistan in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, India and China in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and India and China in the BRICS as well. So it is important for India to exploit these. Improve connectivity. India can be a part of an improved connectivity if it joins Russia's greater Eurasian corridor and Northeast Passage, so that we can also get connected with the Far East. This is the Northeast Passage. India should show interest when it comes to all this, so that we can also be a part of when there is an exploration process going on for the Arctic region for many natural resources. Now, collaboration with Iran and Arabia, this should be done. Saudi Arabia specifically is already our fourth largest trading partner, and that makes it important for India to ensure that we are engaging with it. Recently, Saudi Arabia and Iran, these have also become a part of the expanded BRICS. Moving on. Next is India and the G7. What is the G7? G7 is a group of those 7 economies that are developed, that are strong, that are growing in nature. This was born in 1975. Earlier, Russia was also a part of it, and that was called the G8. But after the annexation of Crimea in 2017, it became G7, and G7 consists of Germany, UK, France, Canada, Italy, Japan, and US. India has been called time and again to become a guest of the G7 summits. Recently in Hiroshima also, India was a guest along with certain other countries. We'll talk about them as well. So these are 7 member countries, first meeting of the group of 6. 40% of the global GDP, they hold 1 by 10 of the world population, and I have already told you about Russia. Why is India being called time and again to be a guest? We will discuss that. See, India, Australia, Cook Islands, Brazil, Vietnam, and Indonesia. These were the certain countries that were called to be a guest at the G7. We will talk about the relevance first. How is the G7 still relevant? It came into existence after the oil crisis, Gulf oil crisis. Why is it still relevant? We will talk about that. See, because of its economic weightage, it can shape the global financial order. That is why it is important. It can give birth to certain policies that will, of course, impact the GDP of the world for a significant amount. It is also very politically influential, and also when it comes to international cooperation, it is highly represented in international forums, be it World Trade Organization, United Nations, and everywhere else. But when we talk about conflicts and nuclear proliferation, it couldn't do much, because UNSC, through that, it had the powers. If one country vetoes, the rest cannot do much. So this is one of the point of contention. The symbolic importance of it being a single block, the psychological perpetuation of the richer being the mightier. This is the symbolic importance. It is also a catalyst for global governance. It has given form to the Financial Action Task Force, which is one of its biggest achievements. Okay, moving on. Why is India invited time and again to the G7? See, the biggest reason right now is India's emerging economy, India's technological prowess. Recently, how it showed that we did this soft landing on the south pole of the moon. We reached somewhere where no other country could have ever reached, and maybe in the future it will be India setting an example for each and every spacefaring country. So first, that its influence and responsibility as well. It is a responsible part. It's not like China, that it is engaging in turmoil with each and every country that it is neighboring. For example, the South China Sea, ourselves. So it's a responsible part. It has remained one of very few countries which were able to stand their ground even at the times of pressure. I'm talking about the Russia-Ukraine war. It has remained very firm with its voice. It has remained very strong when it comes to showing what it wants for itself, and at the same time respecting each and everyone's integrity. So what it wants to be, it has shown it, and that is why it is being respected. India stands third in the world when it comes to defense expenditure. This is another feather in our cap. When it comes to defense expenditure, we are the third. That means we have an army to safeguard our own security. Also, India's GDP is similar to the UK, higher than France, Italy, and Canada. And why not? Why shouldn't India be included? For these many reasons, it should be. It's a democratic country, unlike China. Whenever there is a democratic country like India, it becomes easier on policy format. It becomes easier to bring certain policies to fruition because democratic countries see eye to eye. And it is easier for countries with democracies to coordinate with each other. Now, it is a responsible and great power, unlike China. Okay, moving on. India in this particular summit also gave 10-point action plan. First, we should have inclusive food system that protects the most vulnerable. Of course, through its being the voice of the global south, an emerging voice of the global south, it has remained committed to what it wanted to say in the G7. Food security. Depoliticize global fertilizer supply chain so that food security can be maintained. Develop an alternative model to fertilizer. Stop food wastage to strengthen food security. Development models inspired by the needs of the global south. Promote holistic healthcare, adopting millets. Resilient healthcare system. Promote digital healthcare. Ensure mobility of healthcare professions. Even if we talk about the basic criteria of becoming a global power, India has remained firm on its ground when it comes to, it shows the deep-rooted problems of the global south. Food security, fertilizer security, health security. This is what we call as a global, responsible global power, right? Moving on. Why is it not much effective? I'm talking about why is the G7 right now, it is losing its relevance. First of all, it's very restricted, right? It's a cliche. It's a group of elites. It's not representative. It is not diverse in nature. Then there is divergence of interest as well. Many countries, because of their own democratic promises, cannot work on the same lines when it comes to international promises. There is a change in global dynamics. I've already explained you this in depth, how we are changing right now. Implementation of commitments. When it commits, it becomes really impossible to deliver on time. This is why it is not relevant. It is not considered relevant. That is why it is including countries such as India, so that it is showing that yes, from the global south, we are open to the membership of certain countries from the global south. It remains to be seen if India will become a part of G7 in the times to come. Next, we have to talk about India and the Pacific Islands. I hope you are gathering a lot of information. You are getting a lot of knowledge. This is also applicable for those who are going to prepare for the UPSC 2024, so do not worry about it. All right. Now, Papua New Guinea at Port Moresby. For the first time ever, an Indian Prime Minister visited, and that is our current Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He went to co-host the Forum for India-Pacific Island Cooperation, which was launched in the year 2014. The members include the 14 islands of Pacific Ocean. That includes from Polynesia, Micronesia, and Melanesia. These 14 countries are Fiji, Cook Islands, Kiribati, Marshall Islands, Micronesia, Nauru, Niue, Palau, Papua New Guinea, Samoa, Solomon Islands, Tonga, Tuvalu, and Vanuatu. Also, Pacific Island consists of three major groups: Micronesia, Melanesia, and Polynesia. We have talked about that. Now let's talk about the term Indo-Pacific. What is it? Indo-Pacific is not a geographic term. It is not pointed out or highlighted in your atlas that this region is Indo-Pacific. It's a geopolitical term, just like Eurasia. And we have differences of perspective when it comes to defining Indo-Pacific from the USA. India says it all starts from East Africa and goes till the Western Pacific. But USA says no, it starts from west coast of India and goes towards the west coast of the United States. So there is a difference. But still, more and so, we understand that this region is very important for many reasons. Because if we talk about this region is excessively important for trade. Nearly 50% of India's trade is centered in the Indo Pacific region. The Indian Ocean carries, out of this, Indian Ocean carries 90% of the trade. Maritime security. Because of so many sea lanes that are going through, and because of the presence of choke points here, there are so many choke points. That means these points, if any country has to harass another country by blocking these areas, not letting these areas to be a route to trade, it becomes a maritime security threat. And in the cases of war as well, it is important to ensure that these sea lanes remain open. That is why it is important. Also, enhancing trade and investment cooperation. There are many countries in the Pacific Islands that are unexploited. I wouldn't call them unexploited, whose potentials have not been unleashed. And these Pacific Island countries need sustainable loans, not loans like the Chinese give. Just give them and at an exorbitant cost, take interest from them. If they are not able to pay interest, take their ports, also place your navals over there. It's not like that. So we need to ensure that we keep these sea lanes open. Promoting sustainable development and other important things such as climate resistance, climate resilience, how to ensure that Pacific Island countries are resistant to climate change. Even if right now we are not able to do a lot when it comes to disaster resilience, in the future, India can be a leader in mock drills of disaster management programs for Pacific Island countries. And we have to develop a lot of infrastructure as well. That is why this region is very important. So initiatives have also been undertaken by India with respect to Indo Pacific. In 2019, Indo Pacific Wing was created under the Ministry of External Affairs. In 2020, Oceania Division was created in the Ministry of External Affairs so that more dedicated approach can be taken. It also launched free and open Indo-Pacific ideas, security and growth for all in the region, that is SAGAR, Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative, and groups like QUAD, so that this region remains free of any assertion specifically from China, and each and every country can grow together when it comes to trade. Now, the significance is a lot. First of all, the geostrategic trade significance that I've already told you. Maritime security, I have already told you. Economic, I have already told you. Resource and exclusive economic zone. There are certain countries in the Indo-Pacific who have even bigger exclusive economic zone than their mainland, the area of their land. So these regions are full of natural resources. Natural gas, LNG, energy is the need of the hour. And that is why this region has to be ensured that it remains free. If India wants to collaborate with any country to jointly explore the natural resources, we have to ensure that China or any other country doesn't get their hand on it solely. If both the countries are being benefited from it, then only it can go ahead. This is what India's perspective is. Then Kiribati, as you can see, I told you about Kiribati. Kiribati is over here. It's exclusive economic. It is one of the smallest countries in the Pacific Island. It alone has an exclusive economic zone of 3.5 million square kilometers, and they know it. They very well know it, why they are important. Okay. Now, regional and global engagements. When it comes to regional and global engagements, India is falling a little behind. We are engaging just with certain countries which have huge Indian diaspora, such as Fiji and Papua New Guinea. But we are not engaging with other countries. We have to ensure that we do it. There is competition from global powers. Most of the countries from the West, as well as China, are trying to ensure that they remain the sole beneficiary of whatever they get from the Pacific Islands. India wants to benefit mutually. This is the basic difference between us. There is unutilized trade potential. Total annual trade is just about $300 million, which is very less. There is emphasis on traditional approach, the way it was going. We did not engage a lot with the Pacific Island countries. Why do we need to do it now? So we need to change it, and it is changing. By the visit of the current Prime Minister, it has changed. Limited engagement is there. As I already told you, with Fiji and Papua New Guinea, we only interact with these two countries well. There is also geographical distance. Such a long distance, it becomes really bothering when we have to spend so much money, so much time to just travel there. So people to people engagement, tourism is not being developed. We need to work on that as well. We need to ensure that we continue with the high level engagements, presidential level, prime ministerial level, foreign minister level, external affairs minister level. So all these will work in our favor. More and more development assistance should be given in the form of loans, grants, loans which are sustainable, grants, technical cooperation, upliftment of economic activities, more trade and investment promotion, cultural exchanges, and connectivity and infrastructure development. The most important one remains helping these countries to be resilient against climate change. These are the certain countries which will be the most impacted from climate crises. India could have its own program when it comes to conducting drills, disaster management drills. India should take responsibility. India should develop models on its own grounds and then import those models to these countries as well, to the Pacific Island nation countries as well. Because climate crisis is not a hoax at all. Anybody who is educated and aware enough will never deny it. And these small countries, because of the Western countries and because of the current developing countries, are at the receiving end of all sorts of infestation through climate change. We have to ensure that we change our approach, and I hope you like this class. Comment in the comment segment how did you like it. Also, do try to be in contact with me whenever you feel that more topics should be added. I will bring more topics, don't worry about that, in the upcoming class. That's it. Thank you so much.